Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Today's date, October the 3rd, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, do not adjust your televisions. We are coming to you Thursday instead of Wednesday. Life be life, and that's what it is. But we pride ourselves on being a news podcast. What does that mean? That means we do our research from the best sources for information with award-winning journalism. We don't do sensational news like Fox News, News Media, Newsmax, The Blaze, The Daily Blaze, The Daily Beast, or whatever extreme left or extreme right you get your views from. We give you the facts and nothing more. At the same time, we do try to watch our language, but words do fly. At the same time, maybe things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So basically, guys, how do we get to this? Well, we have had a lot of death recently because apparently there's a quota. But unfortunately, one Hollywood actor we do want to give our respect to has passed away this week.
For a generation of African Americans, the hit Norman Lear show Good Times represented what many felt was the Black experience in the 70s.
How you gonna know where I'm at if you ain't been where I've been? Understand where I'm coming from?
It was the first sitcom to center on an African-American family, and for many, John Amos's father figure was the symbol of Black fatherhood in America.
Young men, in particular, in the 30s and 40s, of every ethnicity imaginable in the world, they come up and say, "You're the dad I never had."
He left the show after 3 years amid controversy over the show's storyline, his TV death among the most profound television moments of the 70s.
Damn!
For Amos, playing powerful Black characters was a priority, and his turn as the older Kunta Kinte on the epic miniseries Roots in 1977 earned him an Emmy nomination.
Dare I be free?
Yeah, it was a magical moment in television. Material had never been covered that extensively before.
Born in 1939 in Newark, New Jersey, Amos went to Colorado State on a football scholarship, but he was always drawn to the arts. His big break came on the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
How would I know? I'm the weatherman.
That led to a recurring role on Maude, and his career was launched. Amos made his mark on stage and on screen with notable roles in The West Wing, Die Hard 2, and as a lovable fast food restaurant owner in Coming to America.
See, they're McDonald's. I'm McDowell's.
Fans and friends alike are remembering Amos on social media. Tyler Perry writes, "Thank you for all the laughs and all the smiles you brought into my difficult young life. I will forever remember you." His son Casey celebrated his father's life with this heartfelt post. His legacy will live on in his outstanding works in television and film as an actor. He was my dad, my best friend, and my hero.
John Amos was 84. Here's an interesting fact. He briefly played in the NFL, and during training camp with the Broncos, he met Ernie Barnes, whose painting Sugar Shack famously appeared in Good Times opening credits.
Yeah, so again, guys, Dr. John Amos did pass away along with others this week that we do want to recognize, but definitely rest in peace, sir, because again, my introduction to John Amos was actually in Coming to America. Because again, it's hard to explain what's going on with death recently, but apparently we just hope it takes a break. We hope. Best we can hope. And I don't want to say what I really want to say because then again, that'll get me flagged by YouTube. But anyway, moving on, guys. Also, what happened this week was the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Mr. Walz. I'm going to be honest. Outside of the fact that it was probably the most civil vice presidential debate that we've had in a long time, people are still confused over who to vote for. And I cannot make that up.
Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
First of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get.
Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax, and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in.
We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies.
This is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield.
The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does. Margaret, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we want to have
app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric.
These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that you're doing okay. So. Christ have mercy.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that.
We have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world, but they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
So this was probably the most civil vice presidential debate that we've ever seen in history. Now, am I all for civil? Absolutely. Usually when it comes to vice presidents, they're basically just going to be reiterating or trying to explain what their president is trying to do. J.D. Vance, for lack of better words, was basically a younger Trump. 9 times out of 10, everything that he stated was pretty much either overstretched or pretty much a lie. Now, of course, Mr. Walz himself, there were some things that were overstated or were simply not true. But I love the fact that J.D. Vance sat there and told the two moderators that basically said, oh, one of the rules was that you're not going to fact check us. Now, I just want to hang on that part for a second. When your biggest issue is that you don't want to be fact checked, where, again, we have sit there and said on this podcast, if you want to make debates interesting again, fact check these people in real time, whether it's Democrat or Republican, call them out. And they're doing that. And it's only seeming to be one side that has this problem. Conservatives, Republicans. Oh, J.D. Vance, I don't want to be fact checked. Trump, I don't want to be fact checked. Why? because during his debate with Kamala Harris, he was fact-checked. Hence the reason why he doesn't want to do any more debates. Kamala Harris has sat there and said that she would love nothing more. Madam Vice President has said she would love to do nothing more than debate him again. Trump, nah, I'm out. Just goes to show you, folks, the level of substance here. Also, at the same time, they were covering abortions. They were covering the border. They were covering a lot of things. And I like the fact of Tim just sat there and what Mr. Walz said, what Governor Walz had said, when it comes to women, mind your own business. Simple, really simple. Whereas J.D. Vance was saying, well, who's speaking about the life of the child? Still touting the pro-life bullshit. I shouldn't be surprised. But I will say this. It was the most civil debate that we've had in a while. However, what kills me is that folks sit there and look at this and go, well, it doesn't swing me more to vote for Kamala Harris or for Trump. Okay, first and foremost, it does not take a debate to figure out which way you should vote for. Now, again, I'm trying to say this from an obvious logical standpoint. It shouldn't take much at all, really. But I wasn't expecting the vice presidential debate to move the needle for a lot of people because some people you just have to scratch your head and move on about. But at the same time, if voting is not more apparent in this election, I don't know what is. But I want to stick with Trump for a second because Trump not only said some crazy stuff, he is sounding more like the older gentleman that should not be fit for office, which he accused President Biden of. But Trump has said a lot of crazy stuff. But what I'm about to play, if this does not disqualify him from being allowed anywhere near nuclear codes or armaments or things of that nature, then you people actually want what he says is about to happen.
You see these guys walking out with air conditioners, with refrigerators on their back, the craziest thing, and the police aren't allowed to do their job. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately.
What sounded like a description of the movie franchise The Purge was just one part of Trump's unhinged weekend as we head into the final 5 weeks before Election Day. It included the actual 34-time convicted felon trying to brand his opponent, Vice President and former prosecutor Kamala Harris, as a criminal for her actions related to the border, both at his rallies and in social media posts, calling for her to be impeached, prosecuted, or both. And when Trump wasn't threatening to prosecute Google for allegedly only displaying bad stories about him or wailing that Fox should not be allowed to air any of Harris's events on its network, he was spewing increasingly sinister, violently racist rhetoric about his opponent, Black-run cities, and immigrants.
Kamala is mentally impaired. Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. Think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this. I'm here only because they cheat, and they cheat in this state, especially in Philadelphia. And I mentioned a couple of the areas, but for the most part, Philadelphia is out of control. Detroit is out of control. Atlanta is out of control. Places are out of control, out of control. They make our criminals look like babies. These are stone cold killers. They'll walk into your kitchen, they'll cut your throat. That's over 647,572 migrant criminals who Kamala set loose to rape, pillage, thieve, plunder, and kill the people of the United States of America. And they're not going to change. They're only going to get worse.
First of all, it's Kamala, Donald. Even little kids know that. And mind you, in a normal world, if a candidate spoke like this, they would be elected to have their head examined, not elected to the White House. But this is anything but normal times. And one has to wonder, is Trump just demented? Or is he doing this to try to appeal to a certain type of voter? Joining me now is Tom Bonnier, political strategist and senior advisor for Target Smart, and Fernando Mondi, Democratic pollster and MSNBC political analyst. I'm going to let you go to that first, Tom, because this kind of just insane talk and Hitler talk it seems like either Trump is really just not very bright, or his brain is smoothing out as he ages, or he's doing it on purpose. And it seems to me that the latter might be the case.
I agree.
Who would it appeal to?
There's a tendency to try to sane wash the things he says and to say, well, when he goes off script, he's just speaking off the top of his head. What struck me about what we saw in those clips is most of that was scripted. That was off a teleprompter. That's a campaign strategy. It's not an especially new one, the strategy of fear. But why is this their strategy at this point? They're seeing the same numbers that we're seeing. We're seeing this rise of intensity and enthusiasm that you and I have been talking about over the last few weeks after Vice President Harris became the nominee. They're seeing the enthusiasm gap where perhaps Republicans aren't as energized right now. We don't know for sure, but there's lots of data pointing in that direction. And so what's the old tried and true trick that they go back to? It's fear, it's racism, and it's violence.
Right. And Fernand, one would just assume based on Donald Trump's past proclivities when it comes to Black people, that it's literally just trying to stoke white voters. But it also is directed at bumping up his numbers with Latino voters. Let me show you some of the new numbers in our NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. So in general election among Latino voters, Harris is beating, Telemundo and NBC News poll. Harris is beating Trump 54-40 when it comes to Latino voters overall. But that's actually high for a Republican. When you break it down among Latino voters, Dems are plus 44. We're plus 44 with Obama in 2012. They were plus 38 in 2016 when Hillary won the popular vote but lost the election. They were up 33 with Biden, and now it's only 14. Then we go to Latino voters by age and sex. Men under 50 is where Trump is leading. And that stands out to me, Fernand, because every other group, men over 50, women over 50, women over 50, and et cetera, Harris is doing really well. And then I'll do one last one and on education. Men with no college degree, Latino men with no college degree, Trump is up 13. And last one, let me just one more, Catholic Latinos, Harris is up 20. Evangelical Protestants, Trump is up 36. So he is also using these really venal appeals, ironically, to appeal to Latinos. Why is that working?
Well, keep in mind a couple things, Joy. For those younger Latinos, those are under the age of 30 for the most part. I mean, these are people that have come to political consciousness in an era where Trump has been the dominant figure of political life. So he's been the guy. And his campaign, for that matter, has made it an effort and a point to target that group. That's why they've done so many events in the UFC, mixed martial arts underground, trying to really cater, specifically lock into that group. Now, those numbers that you showed earlier, are they concerning for Democrats? Yes, they are, because it was a trend that we've seen now over several election cycles. The silver lining are two. Remember, the Hispanic vote is also getting larger. So even though that those margins, Joy, aren't necessarily the same, you're still netting out more raw votes when it comes to Democrats, as long as they win that Hispanic vote. Secondly, even within the margin of error, I still think when the voting is done, and that's, remember, the poll that counts, we'll see it in the exit polls, Kamala Harris will be above 60%. Donald Trump will be below 40% when it comes to Hispanic voters. The other thing that matters most, yes, the national numbers are a trend line. What's happening in the battleground states? If we really saw this effect nationally with Hispanic voters in the battleground states, Kamala Harris would be in trouble there. Truth of the matter is, she's not. She's doing very well in Pennsylvania, where the Hispanic vote is helping drive the lead she has. Same for the North Carolina lead she has there. A lot of that is driven by the growth of the Hispanic vote. They're voting for Harris. You see what's keeping Nevada in the Harris column, that Hispanic vote as well. So yes, these are numbers to keep an eye on, but it's not the doomsday that I think a lot of folks want to think it is. And when you factor in also the weaponization of polling, not suggesting our colleagues at the NBC Telemundo poll have done that, but there are other polls out there that are trying to make a case of reality that is not what we're seeing when it comes to the actual numbers in those battleground states.
So just to go ahead and keep it in perspective here, at the point, Trump called for the purge, saying, and also giving police 100% unilateral power. And yet, for all those that have seen The Purge, in paper, it may sound like a great idea, for 24 hours, all crime, including murder, is legal. That was a movie. I don't want to see or ever consider or even hear that someone is considering making that a real thing, because number one, I like think it's not gonna go the way you think it's gonna go. Because if all crime was legal for 24 hours, I'm not, doing what they're doing in the purge. I'm looking for banks. I'm just saying. I'm looking for banks. I'm wiping out my student loan debt. All crime is legal for 24 hours. I'm going to make it come up so when those 24 hours are done, I'll be in a lot better situation. But that's what Trump believes. He is a demented man who is spouting off whatever he wants to spout off. Because remember, this is what Trump does. He gets in front of a crowd. He performs his con man stunt. He says anything that's crazy. Why? Because the crowd he plays to loves it. It's like watching a singer. It's like watching a singer perform their greatest hits in front of their crowd. They know their crowd. They know what stokes them. They know what excites them. And for a lot of people, Trump is that wet dream of doing everything that you want to do without zero consequence. And a lot of those people fall into that. But like I said, the fact that, talking like that would usually disqualify somebody as a president, not get cheers. That's the seriousness of all this. And the reason why Trump won't do a second debate, the reason why Trump will just go on his rallies and things of that nature, the reason why he'll keep on grifting, because that's how he makes his living. That's how he gets his money to pay for his lawyers. That's how the RNC, who's paying for Trump's legal defense, also paying. And people that are buying his merch are doing nothing more than lining his pockets. He is a con man playing political person who would love nothing more than a second act in the presidential chair. And I'm sorry, for a guy who said Biden was too old to run, sir, you are too dangerous to be left alone inside of a light switch store. And that's saying a lot. Just saying. But as we're moving along, guys, I want to bring this story up as well that this happened this week. A Georgia judge did declare the state's abortion ban unconstitutional, which means that now abortions can be performed up to until 22 weeks into pregnancy. Again, this is a win for women. I cannot stress this enough as far as when it comes to abortion. I cannot believe it is 2024. We are still talking about the fact that women still do not have control or autonomy of their own bodies without having a man's opinion on it. As a man, I agree with what Governor Walz said. Mind your own damn business. What a woman does with her body is her business and her business alone, and she have no infraction from anyone. Why? Because it's her body. If it happened to men, there'd be riots in the streets. I say it all the time. If men had to go through what women go through, when it comes to care and say over their bodies, there would be riots in the streets. And I'm going to be honest, for a lot of us, I'm kind of, happy that women have a little bit more patience than we do, because I guarantee if women acted like us, riots in the streets. I'm just saying. But shout out to Georgia for actually getting one right. Now, will this mean that there will be an appeal? Of course, because Republicans will appeal it and then try to get it back to an appeals court and lawyer this thing to death, because apparently they believe that, they are pro-birth or pro-life. And there's nothing, and it's so crazy that when Roe versus Wade was there, it simply was the right decision. To which the Supreme Court, an overly and conservative majority Supreme Court, decided to kill it. Here's also the thing that's going to be this is also the thing that's going to kill you. Well, not really kill you, but also should annoy you. And I keep on saying the dangers of a conservative majority Supreme Court. Religious groups are now hoping that their cases get heard by the Supreme Court. These are cases to where certain religious groups that do offer health care do not want to cover abortions, do not want to cover women, do not want to cover aspects of women's health care, do not want to cover pap smears or things of that nature. And because the government mandate that all care needs to be given to everyone, regardless of color, preference, or things of that nature, religious groups are saying, hey, we have a Supreme Court that'll listen. Let's go to them. And it's crazy because it's not just healthcare. You literally have a group, and I cannot make this up, of Muslim and Eastern Orthodox parents, because they have their case, trying to get their case about Supreme Court, because they want to opt their elementary school children out of reading books about gender and sexuality. They are going, and I'm stuck, because you would think the highest court in the land, because we have our district courts, then you have our 13 courts of appeals. Then from there, you have the Supreme Court. How is it that these people are able to skip the biggest two judiciary houses and move on to the grand finale? I thought only Trump could do that, but apparently some people have figured that out. And again, here's the problem. Here's the problem with a overly conservative Supreme Court. When they, and again, this is the same conservative majority Supreme Court that struck down Roe versus Wade, that gutted college entrance exams of affirmative action, which actually led to the destruction of DEI positions and programs in various businesses. And they're not done. They also gave Trump, or I like to call it, they gave presidents immunity from presidential acts they've done while in office, to which Trump is like, oh, well, shit, I did a lot of crap that certain people can't go, some people can't come for, but we'll get to that momentarily. But this is the dangers of a Supreme Court that is conservative majority based. Some of those cases could be heard, even more so could be ruled. And the scary part, it could be ruled in the plaintiff's favor. You have Muslims that want to opt their children out of reading books about Muslim couples, not all Muslims, but that's just one of the cases. Another case is basically a Catholic organization doesn't want to cover abortion pills, or does not want to cover paying for abortions, or does not want to cover for the care, for post-abortion care for their members. And that's just a few of the stories that we should be, if you're not paying attention to that, that just goes to show you, especially for women, who will be the deciding factor, along with people of color. Women and people of color will decide the election this year. And I've said this going on 2 years. The most pissed off group of voters in this election will be women, because you guys have gotten the short end of the stick for a while now. And it feels like the reckoning is coming this November. But I digress. Want to cover this really quick because New York City Mayor Eric Adams we did talk about this a little bit last week, that he was indicted. Now we know what he was indicted on.
Breaking news now, New York City's Mayor Eric Adams is speaking now after pleading not guilty to accepting bribes and illegal campaign contributions. He's giving remarks outside that courthouse. Let's listen.
But the spectacle of this so exciting to them that they wanted to bring another one of these cases. This case isn't even a real case. This is the airline upgrade corruption case. The third thing we said is that we demand that they bring exculpatory information and the discovery to court on Wednesday. As you know from looking at the indictment and from what happened in court, there are no emails, text messages, or any corroboration whatsoever that the mayor knew about anything having to do with these campaign donations. The entire body of evidence is one staffer that says there was a conversation. What you have not learned is that that staffer has lied, and the government is in possession of that lie. When that staffer was first interviewed, that staffer said that Mayor Adams knew nothing about this, he was not involved in this, and that he is innocent. They have that information. They have not turned that over to us. They have not turned that over to you. And so it sort of does not surprise us that they did not answer any questions at that press conference, their little press conference the other day. They have no answer for any of these questions. And they didn't want to stick around from questions either. Questions like, why are they doing this? Why are they targeting him? The questions you all started to ask as they were leaving. They normally answer questions. They didn't want to stay for questions in this case. And they left, and they made this assertion, or this, they implied that somehow he's disappointing people, or that people ought to be disappointed in him. It's not him doing this. It's the government, the other government, that everybody should be disappointed in, bringing this case against the sitting mayor. I don't have anything further today, and thank you all.
If Hochul calls on you to resign, will you? Corrupt, Mr. Mayor. Are you corrupt? Did you take free hotel rooms?
Well, I will say one thing. Mayor Eric Adams didn't really say a lot, mostly his lawyers. Now, of course, this is about federal robbery and fraud charges because of airline and hotel upgrades. And the fact that his lawyer is saying, oh, well, this is all a witch hunt. They, the witness they have wasn't really reliable. Show us the evidence. He's doing his job as a defense attorney. He wants to there and say, but here's the thing. If there is evidence, which again, we'll see it in court, the mayor will have his day in court. But again, if he is compromised just because there are trails of talks in text between him and officials who did upgrade certain items in order to gain favor with certain political parties. It's not surprising. But at the same time, what is surprising is that, well, if he is guilty, will he leave? A few of his staffers have already resigned. One is actually under indictment as well. But we will cover that story because this is a guy who this mayor, former transit cop, did have some ties to certain communities. So yes, I always say follow the money, but everybody has their day in court. We shall see where it goes along. But for right now, it's not looking good for the mayor. Moving right along, guys, I want to cover the story first because, again, another strike, especially the strikes where the ports on the east side ports from all the way from Texas all the way up to Boston were on strike. But let's first cover the story from where it started.
Tens of thousands of dock workers walking off the job just after midnight. The strike threatens the nation's supply chain and could lead to higher prices and possible shortages. Ports from Maine to Texas, like the ones you're seeing live right now, are being impacted. Elizabeth Schulze starts us off at the vital port of New York and New Jersey. Good morning to you, Elizabeth.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Hundreds of union workers here tell us that they are demanding a fair contract, and the union's president says that they will stay on strike until they get that. Until then, busy shipping hubs like the Port of New York and New Jersey here, the busiest on the East Coast, are at a virtual standstill.
Nothing's going to move without us.
This morning, tens of thousands of union dock workers at more than a dozen ports from Maine to Texas are off the job and on the picket line.
We're here to support for going forward the future. No automation. We want to secure our jobs.
At midnight, the International Longshoremen's Association announcing its first strike in nearly 50 years after it failed to reach a new contract agreement with the U.S. Maritime Alliance. During 11th hour negotiations, the union insisting on a 77% pay increase over 6 years and limits on the use of automated machines. The shipping industry group responding with the nearly 50% pay hike.
I want to tell you, Zoe, what you're doing is right. This is going down in history, what we're doing here.
14 vital ports that absorb more than half of the cargo shipped to the U.S. from other countries are now at a standstill. Fresh fruit, clothes, machinery, and medicine won't be loaded on or off container ships, potentially costing the American economy up to $7.5 billion in 1 week. Analysts say for every day the strike lasts, it could take 6 days to clear the backlog, an echo of supply chain bottlenecks during the pandemic. Retailers like executive Kevin Rhee say a strike lasting more than a couple weeks could force businesses like his to raise prices for customers.
If all the East Coast and the Gulf Coast ports are closed, businesses will be bringing things in from the West Coast, which will cause more congestion there. And you have to transport that all the way across the country. Ultimately, what that means is higher costs for consumers.
The union says it will still handle military cargo and cruise ships will run on schedule during the strike. The White House has just released a statement saying that President Biden and Vice President Harris are closely monitoring any supply chain impacts.
Okay, so that was earlier this week. Now, as of today, they did reach a tentative agreement, but that tentative agreement is still, well, let's be honest, not very stable. It's supposed to extend out to January 15th of next year. To where negotiations are going to happen again. But guys, I keep saying this all the time whenever it comes to strikes. It always comes down to people don't want to be millionaires. We understand not everybody can be millionaires, but what people do want they do want to be able to understand. They want to be able to work a job that covers their way of life. They want to be able to work a job that covers the bills, that covers the house, the apartment, that covers the food, that where you're not killing yourself for 80 plus hours on. And here's the thing, this strike is affecting the ports on the east side. Now, for all those that remember, just sometime last year, there was a strike on the west side, on the west coast. Remember with the trains and ports on that side, where they sat there and said if a deal didn't get done, that those ports over there would shut down. That deal was struck. The workers got what they wanted. Everybody was happy, even though they did introduce some automation. That's another thing. These workers don't want automation. There have been plenty of videos out there on social media, I'm pretty sure on TikTok and everywhere else, where they've showed automation in ports areas. And it's like, oh, well, this is going to kill jobs. Well, that's the fear. The fear is automation does kill jobs. Automation does replace workers. It does replace skilled workers when you put in machines to do the work. Here's the problem. For all that automation, somebody has to watch the machines. Somebody has to watch the code. Somebody has to watch the environment. And when you have that many people that are just simply doing the work and just simply want to be paid and don't want automation, it should be simple. But it does go back to corporate greed. I cannot stress enough. Boeing's already having that problem right now. Their corporate greed is what's killing that company outside of planes falling out of the sky or badly manufactured or missing parts. The fact that you are pushing your workers, ignoring certain skill checkpoints, and putting profit over personal gain and employee safety screams volumes. It's exactly what the Maritime Alliance is doing with their ports. They simply do not want to pay these workers. And everybody's like, oh, but they make 80 and then $80,000 and up. For the job they do and the cost of living in their area, it should be higher. Because you know why? The cost of living everywhere is up. So therefore, everybody's wages should be higher. Because you know who's not complaining? The corporations that are raking in profits in a post-pandemic era. Again, this can all be solved so simply if the Maritime Alliance does agree to pay raises and certain automated restrictions that these workers are demanding. Because as I've said it once, I'll say it again, every strike that we've covered has never ended badly for the workers. If anything, they've gotten what they wanted and then some. But as of right now, the strike has been suspended until next year. That could change because, again, it's tentative, which means tomorrow they may be right back out there on the picket lines all over again. But we'll stick with that story as it develops. Also, another story that's developing, Hurricane Helene. Two things I wanted to cover because, number one, Trump never disappoints in taking advantage of throwing shots at Biden, saying that, Georgia Governor Brian Kelly did not talk to Biden. And yet Biden and also the governor basically said, no, that's cap. We talked.
And material to the storm zone. That didn't stop former President Trump from making false statements about the federal response as Vice President Harris cut short a campaign swing to meet with FEMA officials. Rachel Scott is tracking the campaigns. Good morning, Rachel.
Hey, George, good morning to you. Yeah, Donald Trump touched down here in Georgia. He visited a part of this state that had been gutted by that storm. And despite vowing to put politics aside, he still resorted to pushing false claims about President Biden.
This morning, President Biden laying into Donald Trump for pushing false claims that Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp could not get President Biden on the phone after the devastating storm, despite the president providing full resources of the federal government to help.
Let me get this straight. He's lying. And the governor told him he was lying. The governor told me he was lying. I've spoken to the governor, spent time with him, and he told me he's lying. I don't know why he does this. And the reason I get so angry about it, I don't care about what he says about me. I care what he communicates to the people that are in need. He implies that we're not doing everything possible. We are.
The Army placed officials and equipment in Georgia ahead of the storm. The federal government has deployed more than 3,500 people to Georgia and other states to respond to the aftermath. Still, this is what Trump said just hours earlier while surveying storm damage in southern Georgia.
The governor's doing a very good job. He's having a hard time getting the president on the phone.
The reality, Kemp himself said he spoke with Biden.
He just said, hey, what do you need? And I told him, we got what we need. We'll work through the federal process. He offered that if there's other things we need, just to call him directly, which I Appreciate that.
Vice President Harris also changing her travel plans over the storm, canceling a campaign event in Nevada to return to Washington and meet with FEMA officials, saying she spoke to the governors of Georgia and North Carolina, too.
I plan to be on the ground as soon as possible, but as soon as possible without disrupting any emergency response operations, because that must be the highest priority in the first order of business.
So what's crazy about this is Trump will say anything to make himself look good and to make Biden look bad. In this case, he failed miserably to have Biden kind of go out of his character a little bit and say, wait a second, I did talk to him. I don't get bothered about anything he says about me, but you ain't not about to call me a liar. And of course, Mr. Brian Kelly turned around and sat there and said, oh no, Brian Kemp. Sorry, I keep on saying Brian Kelly, my apologies. Brian Kemp had turned around and said, oh yeah, he called me and asked me what I need. And I said, well, we're gonna go through the federal process. It is amazing how all these conservative states, when Mother Nature decides to rack them upside the head, that all of a sudden the word socialism and assistance is not in their vocabulary. But I digress. But also shout out to Kamala Harris, who is also taking it upon herself to try to, see what's going on with this. And a lot of people saying, well, how come the president and the vice president aren't there? Here's the problem. If the president and the vice president do go somewhere, that means that area has to be secured. Kind of hard to do that in a flood devastated area. I mean, unless you want to put them in the same position as Trump was with his outdoor rallies. I'll leave it at that. But again, it just goes to show you Trump will at any time take any advantage he can to sit there and try to throw shade on the president instead of actually helping, because it's not like Puerto Rico where he had the paper towels. Which also, guys, with the ports being closed, with the ports were temporarily closed, can we not panic shop just one time? Not panic shop. That's all I ask. But speaking of Hurricane Helene, guys, there is a story that is coming out of Tennessee involving Impact Plastics where workers have died only because a company, really waited too late to send workers home. And I wish I could make that up.
Begin with Janya Nordella, who's in Unicoi County tonight, continuing to press for answers about the missing workers at Impact Plastics.
Yeah, Rebecca, I'm out here live in Unicoi County, where, as you can see behind me, it is just truly devastating. And as you can see, the community is trying to rebuild. Officials that say they are now in recovery efforts. And one of the places that was most impacted was Impact Plastics. And the families are concerned that there are no answers. And a lot of workers claim that this could all been avoided if management would have said something sooner.
We shouldn't have worked. We shouldn't have been there. None of us should have been there. And that's what I should say to them.
This is footage of Impact Plastics during the flooding, with several employees stuck, some now missing or confirmed dead.
It hurts knowing that they didn't make it and I did. I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't seem fair to me.
This is what's left of Impact Plastics after the devastating flood. And there are currently work crews here trying to clean everything up, but they say it's going to be a while before anything goes back to normal. Impact Plastics released a statement saying management was monitoring the weather, and when the flooding reached the parking lot and the plant lost power, employees were dismissed. However, some workers claim this is not what happened.
When they told us we could leave, it was just too late. I mean, there was no way out. Some people made it out with four-wheel drive, but if you didn't have four-wheel drive, or if you were stuck in that line I was stuck in, it was too late.
District Attorney General Stephen R. Finney issued a statement asking the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to look into the allegations involving Impact Plastics and any potential criminal violations, saying this is an ongoing investigation. Officials in Unicoi County say they're working around the clock, but families of those missing grow desperate with no answers. I'm devastated. I'm honestly very devastated because I have no news. I don't have any news about her or any of the rest of the families, and her kids are waiting for her. I also did want to add that on Wednesday, Impact Plastics addressed the news saying Impact Plastics has not been contacted by the TBI, but will fully cooperate with their investigation. The company is also conducting an internal investigation. So, and that's all we have so far. So in the meantime, I'm going to send it back to you, reporting live from Unicorn.
So what's crazy about this is that the story is going that during the hurricane, as it made landfall in Tennessee, of course, East Tennessee did get hard along with some areas of Georgia and Florida. But this company, Impact Plastics, did have workers there at the time of the hurricane actually reaching the area, but either let the employees go home too late, or, according to the employees, may have not gotten the warning fast enough at all to where there are still some employees missing, even at the time of this recording. I cannot stress this enough. Yes, that company should be held liable because like the guy said, we really shouldn't have been there. And that's the thing when it comes to weather. Mother Nature, along with climate change, things of that nature, Mother Nature has shown that, look, I'm coming through regardless if you move or not, but it's best that you move. And with flooding, because, again, a lot of people didn't think Tennessee could flood, but as we have seen in most recent years, yes, it definitely can. Even more so that when you have your employees in a really dangerous situation, like the guy said, we shouldn't have been there. We should have been sent home. But it took flooding and the power to go out for you guys to sit there and go, okay, y'all can go home. Nothing can be done. That's crazy and criminally liable. So we're going to see what the TBI comes up with and follow the story because, yes, also, Impact Plastics CEO did put out a statement because apparently there were death threats against him and his family. I would wonder where the death threats are coming from. But at the same time, he did put out saying that, his family, because due to the safety of his family and law enforcement stretching of law enforcement, that, he put out a statement saying, yes, we did know about it. We are extremely sorry. And we will cooperate with authorities. Here's my thing. If that company forces employees to work near a category hurricane that brought flooding to their area, then yes, everyone from management up to the CEO is criminally responsible for that loss of life. But we'll cover that story as it develops. Speaking of story that develops, another win for Biden, his actual student debt loan relief program may actually go through.
It looks like it is all systems go for President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, at least for now. The program has essentially been in limbo after these 7 Republican-led states sued the Biden administration, saying the program was illegal. But then yesterday, a federal judge in Georgia denied those claims, allowing for the student loan forgiveness plan to proceed, giving the Biden administration a political win just weeks before Election Day. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, break this down for us for people who were following this kind of tangentially and then were like, I thought that was settled at the Supreme Court, where it felt like a lot of back and forth. What happened here?
This is kind of a complex law school exam type issue. You have 2 major issues. One is called standing. The other one is called venue. Article 3 standing is a constitutional requirement. All it asks is for every lawsuit that the plaintiff have to have some business. It has to affect him. I can't just not like something the government does or a company does and sue them in court if it doesn't actually affect me. So in this case, the court had previously found that of the states that had sued, only one, Missouri, that was a state that suffered harm. For now, that's enough. They suffered harm. They can continue as plaintiffs. The others can be in the case, but they don't have standing. They don't have an interest in the outcome, and that includes Georgia. Now, the case was actually brought in Georgia, so that raises a separate issue, which is called venue. Was the case brought in the right place? We have a rule in the United States that if I want to sue someone, I'm a New Yorker, you're a New Yorker, but Alaska has some amazing law I want to take advantage of. I can't file that suit in Alaska. I need to have proper venue. And there are all these rules about venue. So in a very creative argument, they said, well, wait, if only Missouri is allowed to bring the lawsuit and Georgia's still in the case, well, this case shouldn't be in Georgia at all, because Georgia has no business being in the case. Therefore, the court said, well, the case isn't completely out, but we're going to transfer it. We're going to send it to Missouri, the one state that has standing to bring the lawsuit. Because remember, the court decided that that loan program, MOHELA it's called, actually had the ability to bring this lawsuit. So the case is dismissed, but for venue purposes. And I've had that in my own cases. It doesn't mean the case truly goes away. It's just getting transferred to another venue where it belongs.
Okay, so what does it mean in the immediate future for people who have student loans? And in terms of where this winds up, is this just going to be back at the Supreme Court?
Yeah, the program goes forward, but I say that with an asterisk because it doesn't really mean that it is now sanctioned or that it has the green light. This is just a temporary reprieve. This case is locked up in all kinds of injunctive actions and stays. So now the case is just getting transferred. That does mean temporarily that there is a, I guess you would say, a temporary green light, but not for long. The case still needs to be adjudicated on the merits. So if this is a win, it is truly only a temporary win at best.
Well, that's one thing about work. The one thing about hoping for something that may actually happen. I keep saying this all the time. Whenever it comes to benefiting the American people, there always seems to be this whole so drawn out situation, and I've never understood it. It's like student loan debt. We've talked about this multiple times on this podcast. It will benefit multiple Americans. For simple fact, the matter is, student loans is really a predatory process that should not be allowed by private banks and other institutions, because an 18-year-old does not know what they're signing up for that could potentially be with them for the rest of their lives. At the same time, student loan debt after 10 years, not really after 5 years, should really go away, because for all those that are wondering about the world of debt and credit, yes, they could definitely hinder your chances of a lot of things. Loans, cars, homes, even jobs, because jobs looks at credit too. But the fact that the injunction against the student debt relief plan has run its course only means that, yes, it will get bogged down more in litigation, only because conservatives and their loan borrowing buddies are dependent upon people still paying out the interest and not the principal, and just being basically habitual bill payers, which is really what they want. But again, it would be nice to push this forward. I still say Biden could have done more. I mean, which he kind of has done more, but I'm talking about pushing for total student debt elimination. But again, I digress. Moving right along, guys, I wanted to cover this other story too before we get to our last couple of articles, last couple of stories for you to get our feel-good segment. Trump thought he might have gotten one over on special counsel Jack Smith, but apparently Jack Smith said, "Oh, no, I still got your ass."
Tonight, special counsel Jack Smith fighting to keep the January 6th case against Donald Trump alive. In a new filing with new evidence, Smith tailoring his criminal case to survive the Supreme Court's ruling that presidents can't be prosecuted for carrying out official acts. Writing that although Trump was president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was a fundamentally private one. Smith also laying out new details about Trump's conduct and conversations in the days and hours before his supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021. After Trump began claiming fraud even as votes were still being counted, the special counsel quotes a Trump aide as saying, "Make them riot." But the bulk of new revelations involve Trump's alleged interactions with Vice President Mike Pence, based on 5 pages of notes by the vice president. The special counsel saying Pence gradually and gently tried to convince the defendant to accept the lawful results of the election, including a private lunch in December where Pence encouraged Trump not to look at the election as a loss, just an intermission. Smith arguing Trump and Pence were political running mates discussing private acts, not office holders contemplating official ones. After Pence decided not to stop the certification and Trump denounced him in a tweet, Smith recounts aides allegedly telling Trump that Pence was in danger. As Trump sat in a White House dining room watching the Capitol riot on TV, Smith wrote, an aide told him Pence had been rushed to a secure location. Smith says Trump looked at the aide and said only, "So what?" In a statement, a Trump campaign spokesman called the filing falsehood-ridden, unconstitutional, and another obvious attempt by the Harris-Biden regime to undermine American democracy and interfere in this election, adding the case should be dismissed.
And Ken, we've been down this road in another context and another time, but doesn't the Justice Department typically avoid taking action related to candidates this close to an election?
Yeah, that is absolutely their policy, Lester. And in fact, the DOJ has now entered what they call the quiet period, where prosecutors avoid announcing anything that they think could influence voters. But it was the judge, not the special counsel, who made this filing public.
And again, this is good. This is basically the special counsel been like, okay, because initially the Supreme Court had ruled back a few months ago that, you know, whatever acts the president does during his presidency, he is immune from. However, special counsel is saying that, hey, half these things that Donald Trump has done was while he was a candidate, not a president. So the immunity ruling would not apply. Now, this is the thing that's always bothered me. That they say, well, we're entering a quiet period with the elections because we don't want to announce anything that can influence the election. Okay. We don't want to announce anything that won't influence the election. Trump was found guilty of mortgage fraud during an election period. He was found guilty of sexual assault during an election period. He has become a convicted felon during an election period. During an election period. He is still fighting indictments during an election period. His cases have been pushed back post-election. Again, during election period. So Department of Justice, I don't get the whole idea of you not announcing charges against a candidate that is already a felon, that has already been found guilty of crimes, and yet you want to remain impartial? Really? It doesn't make any sense. If there is a case against this man, then the case should be heard. He is not the president, but it amazes me so. For the simple fact of the matter is that you have folks that are sitting there and going, well, no, they shouldn't do that just because he could influence the election. This man tried to influence the election on his own by calling the Georgia Secretary of State and looking for 11,000 plus votes. People seem to forget about that. But I digress because it seems the DOJ will not indict anybody who's a candidate, even though he's not president, even though the immunity law would not fit him. But again, I have to digress. The last story I got, guys, is this is just the perceptions reality type of thing. We have an individual who is a college Republican who wants to start a chapter at a HBCU. But part of the reason she wants to start a college Republican chapter is that she would need an advisor. She actually attends Florida A&M University, just because she wanted to be a part of HBCU, but because, as she says, there are unpopular politics on campus, that she cannot find an advisor and she feels alone. Here's the thing I'm going to sit there and say really quickly, because I understand Black conservatives exist. It sounds like an oxymoron because I've said it here on this podcast. I will never understand why a Black person chooses to be conservative or why you call yourself a Black Republican, because the simple fact of the matter is the conservative viewpoint and the Republican viewpoint has nothing to do with people of color. It's basically for old, rich white men. They don't even like women. But here on the show, we do try to acknowledge all views. Now, the reason she's going to have a hard time is because you're not going to find a lot of Black conservatives in certain states. Now, again, I'm not saying they don't exist, but you're going to have a hard time because the simple fact of the matter is just that, well, for not demonizing, but anytime someone says it's a Black Republican, even I've said it, you're in it for the money. Candace Owens was in it for the money. Paris Elliott was in for the money. What's that officer? Some officer guy on YouTube, I can't remember his name to save my life right now. The 1776 twins are in for it. It's really just basically one-on-one grifting. I have said there and said it before. If tomorrow I decide I want to do conservative talking points and I want to sit there and say I was pro-Trump, I'd be on Fox News in less than 48 hours. Because they need to have something of people of color to sit there and say they're not racist. But I feel for her. I really do feel for her because if she wants to bring a chapter of Black Republicans to an HBCU, it's not entirely impossible. But again, it is going to be highly improbable because perception is reality. And for the simple fact of the matter is, well, a lot of people are not too enthused about Black Republicans because you guys are kind of like a figurehead on a board at McDonald's. Yeah, you exist, but no one's picking you up. But we're going to go and move on to our feel-good segment, guys, because usually how the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you faith in humanity, but hey, it was Wednesday, today's Thursday, so tomorrow will be Friday at the time of this recording. We will leave you guys out some good vibrations, and hopefully this next story will do just that. As a woman who is basically all for education, but teaching STEM through dance. Pretty cool.
Growing up, I love to dance. It's always been the source of community and perseverance and learning how to be determined. I was also very passionate about math problems. I just thought that it was fun, like it was a puzzle to solve. When I was at MIT studying mechanical engineering, I found that in most of my classes, I was the only or one of a few Black women. I didn't think that I had achieved something so extraordinary to be the one or be the one of two. Less than 5% of the STEM workforce consists of women of color. One of the reasons is that from a young age, many girls start to believe that they can't do well in math.
This is strip 1 and that is strip 2.
Exactly. We have to change how girls see themselves and their potential in fields like math.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And I just started to wonder about a world where the benefits that you get from dance can lead to the outcomes that we're looking for in STEM.
When my mom first told me about their program, I didn't even hear the STEM. I just went straight to dance. I was like, okay, dance, okay, I'm in. And she was like, okay, there's STEM to it too. Like, you know, be excited about that part.
Big boss on the move. Freestyle.
Through dance, we're able to create this atmosphere that feels comfortable. And with that space, we're able to introduce something that feels kind of intimidating.
So when I first started the dance part, I really liked it. And then when we went to STEM, I was skeptical at first, but then we really started to go deeper into the STEM part.
We want to set our strip to a color, that way we know it's on. And now we have to create those variables.
I realized that STEM can relate to my deepest interest.
We're gonna pull out this change.
Oh, I was right. It only works when I do it. It makes me more interested because it's something that I love to do.
Can I hear about what you're working on? Basically, our story is like it's the last day of school, like happiness.
We bring STEM and dance together by allowing the girls to create dance performances that combine the two. So they can work on costumes that light up as they move. And they're learning how to program the circuit so that when they press a button on the circuit, the lights turn blue or whatever effect that they want to be able to convey a message.
We're going to talk about song structure today.
They can create their own song through computer science and AI, and through that be able to make choices about tempo and volume and instruments.
So these are the poses in the beginning?
And then be able to make a dance routine to that song that they created.
Love it. This is going to be so fly.
We're normalizing that girls of color can do computer science and create something together.
Our theme is Around the World, the 6 Travelers.
Oh, I like that.
We're all from different cultures.
Yeah.
Culture is really important at STEM for Dance. They can take the dance of their culture and find a way to integrate technology into it.
For the Caribbean part, it's going to flash the different colors of the Caribbean flag.
It's often the opposite, where they have to conform.
How long does it hold each color? Oh, the duration is 1 second. No, between each one.
I think what makes this space special is they get to decide. and they're creating the world that they want to see. Can I see your code?
It's a really good community to have other girls that look like me, encourage each other and push each other to be better and to do STEM and to do stuff that we may tell ourselves that we can't do, and to have other people like tell us that we can actually do it.
Almost showtime. I'll be out there cheering you on. On the last day of camp, the girls perform in a big theater that we rent out. I'm feeling the 80s vibe. Okay. It's a special day because they have the opportunity to show off all that they learned in STEM and dance through performing, and have the affirmation of hundreds of people just cheering them on. That feeling that they get, we want them to remember that and cherish it. And as they go off in life, that they remember that they are celebrated for doing things in STEM and that they can do it. So when they face that hard math problem, they're reminded, I could do hard things. So you're gonna keep in touch afterward?
Oh, yeah. If I could find, and I'm coming back next year.
I also get inspired by what's possible for the future when I see that it just took that spark of dance to get them to express something with technology. Makes me optimistic about being able to change the representation in STEM.
Many girls start to believe that they can't do well in math. We have to counter that message with 10 more messages that say that they are great, that they are capable.
These girls are brilliant. They are creative. They have a perspective that is unique, and they have the potential to transform the world.
And I just think that's pretty cool. The fact that you're teaching STEM, you're using dance to teach STEM skills, which again is heavily needed. I like the fact that more women of color are getting more involved into it. It does my heart good to see that. But that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this podcast live. I certainly appreciate that. Oh, excuse me. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. I cannot stop talking about BlurStation.com. Again, it is the vehicle that we keep talking about, guys, to where we can see our content owned by us, to where our dollars go into our own pockets. Tubi is great, but Tubi is owned by Fox. Keep that in mind. But definitely check out BlurStation, guys, at BlurStation.com. If you do want to join, hit the Join Now button, select the Blur's Eye View Affinity membership, select my name, Black Spartan. I would certainly appreciate that. Again, $10.99 a month to view Blurred Station. $10.99 a month. After 36 months, it does give you the option of joining of owning a piece of Blurred Station. And owning a piece of a media conglomerate has never been easier. At the same time, guys, if you are a content creator that does want to have their content shown on Blurred Station, please join first. Once you are a member of Blurred Station, you can talk to people behind the curtain. If all works out, then your content can also be seen on Blurred Station. Content that you own, but just have to share a piece of distribution. Can't beat that with a stick. But definitely check out BlurStation.com. Also, guys, vote.org. I cannot stress this enough. Why? Because voting is November 5th. We are not too far off. This is October. November is around the corner, people. If you haven't already, please check your registration, because why? Voter purges around the country are being basically thrown out because, well, some people believe that you do not have to have voter registration. But check your registration. Also, check if you're not registered to vote, please do so. You can literally you can actually finish registering to vote before you can actually finish your DoorDash or Uber Eats order. I'm just saying. Also, if you want to vote by mail, you can find out how to do it. Get election reminders, early voting. Again, guys, this website can help out everybody. Please make sure that you are ready for voting day. At the same time, make sure your neighbors are ready for voting day. Because why? Because, guys, if voting wasn't so crucial, they would not be trying to move the goalpost on you. It's just that simple. Vote.org. Also, check out alwayspressrecord.com, as you'll see your shows like mine and others on there. Also on smart devices via the Roku app. Definitely check them out as well. And of course, me, Black_Spartan615 on the socials. You can pretty much find me there. Follow me. I usually talk about everything, but not just current events. Just don't make it weird. I don't want to block anybody. At the same time, guys, the link at the bottom, if I may just make that a little bit bigger, if you copy and paste that link into your browser, take you to our link tree, the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of our podcasts. Like, share, follow. It costs nothing but means everything, because we cannot simply do this without you. But as again, guys, we're coming close to November 5th. It's time to do our civic duties. Why? Because unless you want a second act of Trump, then apparently you must be well off in life. But for the rest of us, we do not need a guy at the wheel who believes the purge is a good idea. The last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society as we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman federal board of governors, and hopefully very soon, not too far off from now, electing our first Black woman to be the first Black female African-American president of these United States. All things great. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why is everything go up on our paycheck? Why are electing different politicians, but still the same old game in Congress? Most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Guys, again, get registered. Vote.org. Be at the ready. Please do your civic duty. We need every vote because every vote counts. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll get through this.